Hello, and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today, I'll be showing you how to cycle from Peckham in South London to Kensington in West London. This ride takes about 40 to 45 minutes, and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, this journey is a bit of a slog and takes between 50 minutes and an hour, so it is faster to cycle this one. If you find this video useful, or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and to hit the bell icon to make sure you get new videos, as I try to post new ones every week. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting on Peckham High Street, and we want to turn right around and go into the square in front of Peckham Library. That's that modern building on the right there. Cycle through the square. This is a shared space with pedestrians, and head for the cycle track. Now you could go straight ahead here and go on to Cycleway 35, but we're not going to do that today. We're going to turn right and we're going down Surrey Canal Walk. The difference between C35 and Surrey Canal Walk is that Cycleway 35 is a route on back streets, reasonably quiet but not totally traffic free, whereas this is a completely traffic free path. It is shared with pedestrians, so make sure you're courteous and don't go too fast and give everybody a wide berth. If you're the sort of cyclist who really doesn't like cycling on a shared path with pedestrians, then you might consider taking C35. You could just follow the arrows parallel to this. It does run pretty much parallel and it ends up at the same place. Maybe give it a go, it could be for you. I think I prefer the canal path, to be honest. It's pretty direct, it's quite nice, and there's a lot of nice greenery and stuff about. Generally a really nice ride. There's also a lot of history to it. As the name suggests, it actually used to be a canal, and as this bridge suggests, this is an old bridge over a canal, and now it's a bridge over a path. This was a working canal carrying timber as recently as the 1970s until it was filled in. It's very nice, lots of greenery. They've obviously built some housing next to it, which is much needed in this part of town. And but it's interesting to think what it would have been like if they kept the canal here. A lot of London's canals are a lot nicer than they used to be, and I think people would probably appreciate it. But still, I love the walkway. I think it's really nice, and it'd be great to see some big roads, maybe the Westway and the Eastway, converted into nice green greenways like this. That would be lovely, wouldn't it? So at the end of the canal walk, you turn left, and you want to cross Sumner Road here to go into Burgess Park. This is a really nice park. It's also a really helpful east-west connection across the middle of the London Borough of Southwark when you're on a bike. And it's 24 hours, so you can come here anytime. The only downside to that is there aren't too many street lamps here. There's not much lighting. You can't really see any. So take that into account if you're planning a route after dark, particularly in the winter maybe. The interesting thing about Burgess Park is that it also used to be part of a canal. The basin for the Surrey Canal is here, and a reminder of that is this bridge that we're about to go under. This used to be another canal bridge. That was a telltale sign that used to be a canal. Burgess Park, actually, funnily enough, isn't finished as well. It was sort of gradually reclaimed from industry, housing, and transport infrastructure. And there are actually still a few roads in the park that haven't been grassed over. So yeah, it's pretty unusual in that respect to have been formerly built up land that was turned into a park. It does have this funky sort of underpass here. Make sure you don't go too quickly here, because remember, these paths are all shared with pedestrians, so you don't want to scare anybody or anything like that. And I think if you look on the right here, you see that brick structure. That is an old lime kiln, and that was built back when the area was first being developed, and that's where they fired all the bricks to build the houses around the area. This was sort of an area of sort of rapid urban growth, so they sort of set up lime kilns right there, and then to get it all done. Now we're leaving the park now, and we go onto Albany Road, and there's this short section of protected cycle track, and for the next bit of the journey, we're going to be following Cycleway 17. So you can see on the ground there are sort of letters saying C17. That's for Cycleway 17. By the way, when you're going in the opposite direction here, at that junction, you do have a little protected lane on the other side of the road that you can use as part of the crossing. It's quite useful. But in this direction, we're just on the carriageway, and it's pretty quiet. This was a Sunday, sort of Sunday morning, mid-morning. but I've been here at all times of day, and generally it's always pretty quiet. And the interesting thing about it is it's actually a boundary road of the Walworth low traffic neighbourhood, and we're always told that boundary roads of LTNs are choked with traffic, and it's where all the traffic gets displaced to. But I mean, clearly that's not the case here. If anything, the closure of the adjacent roads has actually made the street less useful for cars, so there's fewer on it. By the way, this street we're going past here is East Street Market. Really worth a visit if you've not been. Really nice market. Great place to sort of pick up some fruit and veg, or some spices, or some anything like that. Now we're following C17 for now, but we're going to turn off it any second, just after the rocket van sign that you saw on the left there. And we go down here onto Browning Street, and this street is actually in the Walworth low traffic neighbourhood, so it's filtered. There are no through routes on it for cars, and it's very, very quiet. And the reason for that is because if you get to the end of the street, it's actually been closed off. The council has put some planters at the end of the street, and that's closed it off, and as a result it's very quiet. This little bit here, by the way, this would be a lovely bit of public space when the scheme is made permanent. It'd be nice to sort of turn that into a little square, maybe have some seating out there. But for now we cross that road, obviously wait for the lights, we go down Manor Place, and then after the railway bridge you want to turn right immediately. The reason the cycling conditions here are so good is because this is part of the Walworth low traffic neighbourhood, the scheme by Southwark Council, and it's just really quiet, really nice. Excellent cycling conditions. You've got this whole carriageway to yourself, and very few motorists using it except people just trying to access their homes. There's quite a lot of parking, but you can't have everything. Now at the end of the street, you want to turn into the estate here. This is the Canterbury Place estate. There's a bit of a chicane here, which is a bit annoying. And you could go straight on here. You could go straight on. You can see there's a sort of yellow chicane again. But I'm actually turning right. I'm doing a little bit of a detour around Steedman Street. This has, maybe sort of 20 seconds to the journey. The reason I'm doing that is simply to avoid the chicane. I couldn't be bothered to negotiate another one of those chicanes. You sort of have to semi-dismount. But instead we go around it. We would have come out on the left there where that guy's cycling. And instead we've just gone around it. You get to the end of this closure, you can see all these streets sort of closed off to traffic, so this route is pretty much entirely traffic free actually. There's a very little bit of sort of local traffic on it, but very, very minor stuff. You're either on protected lanes or mostly like completely filtered streets. This path here, by the way, do make sure you're forgiving if you see any pedestrians on it, because it is a cycle path and it's mostly for cycles rather than for walking. But the design there's a bit weird. There's not really anywhere for people to walk on the pavement on that side of the road. So when I'm there as a pedestrian, I always find myself sort of dawdling in the cycle path and then realising, oops, I shouldn't be there. We are now on Brook Drive. This is a pretty quiet street, generally quite quiet. There's not many through routes on there. There's a couple in one direction, but not in the other. There's also this width restriction here to prevent HGVs from going through it. Generally, it's a reasonable place to ride. It does need a bit of a resurface though. It's a little bit bumpy. So it'd be nice to do that if the council's got a spare minute to redo that. It'd be pretty cool. Just coming up on our right here after this the sort of terrace of houses ends, by the way, is the Imperial War Museum, which is a good museum. It's got a really weird name because it's not really about Imperial War, it's kind of about remembrance of various wars. But yeah, give it a look. It's free, and I particularly recommend the First World War one. Now, I was just able to sail straight across the road there, right across Kennington Road, but you might need to wait for a gap in the traffic. We're using a cycle path here on the pavement. Kind of a weird design. We sort of have to cross as a pedestrian here, and weirdly this isn't a toucan crossing. There isn't actually a cycle symbol on it, so technically you're supposed to dismount there, but that would be a bit odd, so I just cycled across it. In the opposite direction it's mostly a bus lane, although there are some sections of protected lane, so it's not quite as good, but then making the turnings a lot easier in the opposite direction. You don't have to cross the road, so sort of swings and roundabouts a bit. We head down here to Hercules Road, which is a filtered street. It's got little bollards at the end, which keeps it nice and quiet, and then you immediately turn off just down Virgil Street. It's all very very classical names around here, and you go through this tunnel. Apologies for the camera work. The image stabilisation on my camera doesn't like the dark, unfortunately. But yeah, it's sort of weaving around here. That above us, by the way, is a railway. The reason it looks a bit more modern than the other brick arches is because it's the approach to Waterloo International, so it's where the Eurostar trains used to go, but those platforms are now being used by domestic trains as well. But that's an interesting fact if you're interested in rail infrastructure. This is another sort of find a gap in traffic to cross the road thing. Could be a better way of accessing this track from that street, considering what an interesting link it is, what useful link it is rather. But it's not the end of the world. Just be a bit careful. You've got to wait for the lights, and you get your own protected lane here. You also get a protected lane in the other direction, which is nice. And we're going past St Thomas's Hospital, which I think is a really cool building, and apparently a very good hospital as well. And that means that there will be sort of patients here, so make sure you respect these zebra crossings, even if just be very cautious around them, because there'll be people needing to get from the hospital to the bus. And then we go straight on to Westminster Bridge. This is brand new. I think it's pretty much finished now. These lanes are a little bit narrow, and the protected bollards are a bit weird. They're sort of there for counter-terror purposes. To be honest, in the opposite direction, the pavement gets extremely busy and people stand in the cycle lane. It would have been better to have a two-way track on this side of the bridge, I think, rather than to have a track on the other side. But unfortunately, this is what has been built. There were a lot of compromises, I think. It's a big improvement on what came before, certainly. But I think there are probably still some tweaks that need addressing in the opposite direction. I'll address that in a future video when we go that way, and I'll point out and I'll explain what goes wrong there. But generally, it's pretty good. I mean, that was really great for us. This section through Parliament Square is, nicely well protected. It's one of the sort of London's earliest sort of protected junctions. Proper protected junctions of the latest generation. It's a little bit slow. You have to wait often 3 times at the lights. I would love to see that whole square pedestrianised, actually. I think it would be brilliant. Just sort of pedestrianise the whole area. Pedestrianise Whitehall as well, and have seats outside the pubs. I think that would be great. You sort of route the buses around it. This is kind of a ceremonial central area. There's really no need to have cars. You could have access to Parliament maybe for security reasons, stuff like that. But great. Pedestrianised Parliament Square. Do it yesterday. Now we're out on Birdcage Walk, and this was actually where birdcages used to be kept. And a reader points out to me the other day an interesting fact that it is actually one of the last streets in London where some of the lamps are still gas, which is interesting. You don't really see that a lot. To be honest, I didn't notice it, so I've been down here at night quite a lot. I used to work quite nearby in the day job, and it doesn't seem to have any particular advantages, so maybe it's time they switched them to electric, to be honest. But it is a nice curiosity, let's put it that way. Make sure you obey the lights here, by the way. Not everyone has been doing so. We are about to go past Buckingham Palace, and just a warning, if you go through here on a Sunday, sometimes you get a lot of people walking in the cycle path because it's not particularly well delineated, and on a Sunday a lot of the streets around here are generally closed, so you'll find people will be walking reasonably in the carriageway, and they'll also find themselves into the cycle lane. They'll find their way in there. But it looks okay for us now. We've got a bit of a clear run, which is quite nice. We are now going to head into Green Park, and there's a cycle path on one side at Constitution Hill. Now you can see on the right hand side of that barrier, that's where pedestrians are walking, and on this side of it, this is where we're cycling. Make sure you get on the right side of the barrier, the correct side of the barrier, which is the left side of the barrier, at the beginning, because if you pick the wrong side, you will not be able to cross. You can see there's no gap in the fence there for the entirety of Constitution Hill. I really don't see the point in that. It's presumably some sort of security crowd control reason. A lot of the architecture around here is actually sort of designed with sort of a major riot in mind, so that might be why it's been done like that. But there's basically no way to get between those two paths. That's obviously annoying if you choose the wrong path on a bike, but it's also annoying because a lot of tourists will accidentally walk in the cycle path, and even those that realise that they're in the wrong place will not be able to go back to the correct path, so you'll end up with people walking down the cycle path, which is both dangerous and annoying. I love cycling under that arch, by the way. It's nice. But we are going to cross the road and we're going to go into Hyde Park. This is Hyde Park Corner. Hyde Park Corner tube station just here, if that helps you get your bearings. We're sort of just up from Victoria Station. We've come a long way, haven't we? We've come a really long way. This bit is all shared with pedestrians, and it can get quite busy. So go slow, and keep it easy. We just crossed that road on a red man, by the way. Normally I would wait even for the pedestrian crossings on these videos, just because I like to show people how it works and stuff like that. But I'm not actually sure that that crossing is even in use. I think it might have been deactivated. I don't remember seeing it, and the reason for that is it looks like this street doesn't actually have any traffic on it. This is the South Carriage Drive of Hyde Park, and we've got our own protected lane running next to an empty road. So yeah, there's basically no issue here for us. That tower looming ahead, by the way, that is the Hyde Park Barracks, designed by Sir Basil Spence, a great modernist architect who also designed other buildings such as Sussex University and Coventry Cathedral, which I think is fantastic, and I really like this. I think it's nice. Good little barracks. That is. It's not maybe not what you think of a barracks, but it is defined by its location. There's nothing much going on here, so I will say two things. The first is that if you want a map of this route, and it can be a bit twisty and turny at the beginning, then you can download it. Look in the description of the video, and there is a link where you can download a GPX file for whatever app or device you use. And the second thing is, please remember to subscribe to the channel if you're a new viewer, so you can get all the rest of the videos like this. If you've made it this far, clearly you're enjoying watching it, so you can just sort of zone out and watch all sorts of London cycling videos across London, or get useful tips. I find that people use the channel for a variety of things, and honestly I don't mind how you use it. I'm just glad that people are watching, and I get to keep making them, which is great. Now, just coming up here, we want to go from the South Carriage Drive onto the West Carriage Drive, so that means taking that right fork here, and be very careful because that hedge blocks the route. And yeah, that happens every time. There's always somebody running out there, so I was fortunately prepared and able to brake. But yeah, make sure you just assume that somebody's going to walk into the road without looking there. Because why would you when you're walking along? You don't think, oh, is it my right of way here? Am I doing this? Unless you're crossing a road with cars, people generally sort of just amble along, which is the way it should be. So it's your responsibility on a bike to sort of slow down a bit and to let people go. Now we are going on to Mount Walk. Unfortunately, this section is actually not 24-hour. It does close somewhat after dark, so you would otherwise have to cycle along Kensington High Street for the last bit of it. It's really important that Royal Borough Kensington Chelsea builds the cycle tracks on Kensington High Street. They've been blocking them. TfL wants to build them. It would be great to have them, because this route is substandard. It's inadequate. The Royal Parks, which runs it, has put these, you can see on the floor, they're like little rumble strips. They're basically little lines of cobbles. And what people have been doing is they've been cycling simply around them on the grass, which is the obvious thing to do. And that is why they've got these little gates with the lights on them. You see here, there's one either side. They've put them there so you can't just cycle on the grass around them. So instead of admitting that they've made a horrible mistake and that their stupid rumble strips don't work, they have added another stupid thing. And they're clearly not going to keep them there forever, or maybe they are, I don't know. The funny thing about the rumble strips is that I assume that they're meant to either deter cycling, or despite the fact that you're allowed to cycle on this path, or that they're there to slow it down. But they're actually more painful to ride over slowly. If you go over them quickly, you just feel a little jolt. If you go over them slowly, then you sort of your bum gets rattled for a good few seconds. So they're all around a terrible policy. Fortunately, there aren't any over this bit. That's Kensington Palace on the right there, by the way. It's a palace, you can visit it. We're coming up here to the end of the Royal Parks domain, and here it does say cyclist dismount. Weirdly, it doesn't say it in the opposite direction. There is a shared space sign on there, so it's okay. You may choose to dismount there if you wish. And we're coming out here onto Kensington Palace Gardens, a fascinating street with loads of sort of embassies and ambassadors' residences from various countries. Highly recommend a sort of slow bike ride or walk down there, just have a look at all the different ones. Interestingly, you can come out here if you need to go in the opposite direction. If you want to go into this, look, it looks like there's a security bar there. If you cycle up to it, they'll let you through if you're on a bike. They don't even ask you any questions. It's great. But here we are, Kensington High Street, we've made it. It would be great to have some cycle tracks on Kensington High Street. Please do, if you live in Kensington and Chelsea, please do write to your councillor and ask them to put in cycle tracks. They did put them in briefly during the pandemic, and then they removed them after an alleged backlash. It's a real shame because it's a massive hole in London's cycle network, and also it would mean that you won't have to cycle on that horrible path through Hyde Park, because there'll be an alternative that isn't just mixing with loads of cars and lorries and buses. Thanks very much for watching that, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you think. I love feedback, and I also like requests, so let me know what routes you'd like to see me do. And I'll see you again next time. Thanks very much.